Hi there, welcome to this video, which is part 2 of my back garden bird photography mini-series. If you saw part 1 a few weeks ago, I completely reorganised my perches here in my back garden with a view of taking photographs of back garden birds. By reorganising the perches, you get different photographs than you've got before, and it just keeps the photography interesting. Now, over the last week or so, I've been out in the hide quite a few times, and I've got lots of pictures, probably about 40 that I consider to be really good, and I've probably taken in excess of 300 or 400 in total. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to take you through the process of how I actually take the photos and show you some of my results as well. And mainly I'm going to be showing you why I really enjoy my photography. A really big thank you to everybody that's clicked the like, subscribe and the bell notifications, because it really has helped out the channel and it's taken me past my goal of 10,000 subscribers. It's just mind-blowing to me that 10,000 people have subscribed to my channel, and I really do appreciate it. But also at the moment now I've started offering memberships, so if you would like to support me financially for a small price, there's lots of perks available, such as early access to videos and members only videos. As you can see here in the paddock, we've got a visitor at the moment in the form of a mole, and in the last 3 or 4 weeks quite a few molehills have appeared. But one day when I was out in the hide, I did have a blackbird land on top of one of these molehills, and it made for a different perch. This bit of wood here has proved quite interesting. Now unfortunately quite a lot of the moss has fallen off because I think the bark that it was attached to really wasn't attached very well, because it's been sat on the wood pile for quite a long while. But I've had birds down at the bottom against these bits of foliage, and also here on this bit, so this area here makes for quite a nice area for a bird to land. And also I've been putting food in this area here at the top and just hiding it behind this little bit of bark, and that really attracts the birds to this area. And also just here there's a place where I can put some food hidden away from the camera, so it just attracts the birds and brings them to this part of the display. I put this bit of twig just here between the feeders and the bird table, thinking that it would get quite a lot of use. I've not had a lot of birds on here. I've just had a few birds on this top one. I got a robin and a blue tit, and I think a long-tailed tit as well, just on the top of here. That was quite interesting. This tree trunk here with all the fungus has proved popular with the birds, and again what I've done is I found little nooks and crannies, like just here on the top, where I can put a bit of food out of sight of the camera to attract the birds to the top. Now I've also put a little bit of food on the bottom just down here, because this is another interesting place for the birds to land. This gatepost here always attracts quite a lot of birds because it's very close to this holly bush just here, and we quite often get birds on the top of this, but also on this crossbar here. Now it was no use as a gate, we were about to throw it away, and I thought it'd be useful to just chop the end off and then create a kind of stand at the bottom. And I've also put a trough on the back that I can put feed into, so it attracts the birds, and again from the front where I take photographs it's not visible. Now my tree trunk here that I managed to break just here when I dropped it on the floor in my previous video is still holding up really well. Now this was designed to attract the woodpecker. Now the woodpecker has been around onto the side of the tree trunk, but unfortunately when it came the other day it ended up being a little bit further around the back, because I think what has happened is this tree trunk has just slipped ever so slightly, so these holes where the suet is have moved slightly around the back, and so this is going to be on the side just here compared with where the hide is, and the holes around the back. So I think what I might end up doing is drilling a few more holes and not using these around the back. But it has meant that these on the other side I've now moved a little bit closer, so these are almost on the side. But the day that the woodpecker turned up, it didn't use these. It only used the ones on the other side, and so it stayed a little bit hidden. But I have got some photographs here of blue tits using these holes, and so that's been quite successful. Now, it's quite a while since I've mentioned my plastic hedge simulation here that's behind the perches, but I bought this from a garden centre fairly cheaply, basically to disguise this messy area here that's behind the perches, because it's directly behind this woodpecker tree just here. I've moved around to the front of that tree stump, and you can see that the plastic hedge falls directly behind it, and so it makes for a much cleaner background. And when you've got a shallow depth of field and a long lens, that hedge goes completely out of focus, and it makes for a much less messy background than if there were lots of branches and tree trunks behind. This bit of twig here I thought would be really interesting, and I'd got high hopes for it because it's very close to the feeder, and I thought it'd be a great place just here for a bird to land. But unfortunately they just don't seem to use it. I think mainly because this crossbar is right above it, and that is what they seem to use a lot more. This horizontal twig just here is the one that has been the most successful for getting photographs of birds. And because it's pretty stable, it'll take the weight of bigger birds, so as well as the small birds like blue tits and long-tailed tits that I've had on there. I've had a wood pigeon, and as you will have seen from the thumbnail, I also had a sparrowhawk land just here the other day, which was pretty much the highlight of my last week taking photographs. Here inside the hide I've got a nice comfortable chair, and it's really important to stay comfortable while you're taking photographs, because I find that I'm sat in the hide for upwards of 2 hours and I just seem to get carried away when I'm taking photographs. I never quite want to call it a day, because you think, well, I'll just take one more photograph and I'll wait for another bird to land, and quite often the time just falls away, and staying comfortable is really important. When I'm taking photographs of birds, I've got a panel just here that I can remove that reveals this opening for putting the camera through, and then there is a table in front. But this panel has a fake camera lens on the front. It's just a mug that you can buy fairly cheaply. Now, I don't know how effective it is, but it feels like I'm making an effort. And then I put a beanbag on this table, and the camera then goes through the hole and sits on top of the beanbag, and it creates a really stable platform that I can move the camera around very quickly and reduce any signs of camera shake. Now, as well as these openings that I can put the camera through, I've also got some windows just here that I can look through. Now, I do find that some of the birds tend to notice me even with this mesh covering in front of it. Birds like jackdaws and other birds of a similar intelligence can actually spot me through this window, so I keep them covered up as much as possible. But one of my plans is to replace the perspex that's in this window with glass and put a one-way mirror film on that I can take photographs through, and that hopefully should allow me to take photographs of the more skittish birds but through the glass. Now, in this video I'm not going to give you lots of technical information about using your camera, but I will give you a few tips about how to take photographs of birds from hides. Now, the first and probably the most important tip is to just have lots of patience, because you can't expect to get great photographs of birds straight away. And in fact, it does take about 15 minutes of sitting in a hide before the birds settle down and feel brave enough to actually visit the perches. You might get a few birds like robins or blackbirds that are really brave that'll be straight on the perches, but a lot of varieties wait for about 10 or 15 minutes before they feel safe, and some even longer than that. Birds like jackdaw and woodpeckers can be about an hour before they actually feel calm enough to visit the perches, and sometimes even then they won't come. The other day I was actually sat in the hide for nearly 2 hours, didn't see a single jackdaw, and within 5 minutes of going into the house there were about 5 or 6 of them by the side of the feeders. They can just sense any movement or even really know that there's somebody sat in the hide. The second tip is to really know how your camera works. Make it become second nature. The first thing is to be really familiar with how your camera focuses. Now, as I mentioned in part 1, all of my perches are on roughly the same focal plane, so I don't have to do a lot of changes of focus, and that really helps. If you pan over to a bird that's just landed, you don't want to be hunting about to get a focus lock, and if everything's on roughly the same focal plane, that should make that really quick. Also, I use aperture priority, which means that I get a good exposure all the time, but I can also control the depth of field by setting the aperture. Now, I do use a manual ISO just because I prefer to have control, but a lot of people do let their ISO float, and if you're comfortable with higher ISOs, if your camera will let you do that, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with letting the ISO be automatic as well. But you can set a hard stop for how high that ISO does go within the camera. Another tip that might seem really obvious, but it is worth remembering, is these are wild birds and they're not called flighty by accident. A slight noise or movement that is unexpected will cause them to fly off. So if you're sat in the hide, you need to stay quiet, and anytime you move the camera, do it gradually. If you whip the camera about very quickly, it will be enough to scare off most birds. And some birds, like I've mentioned previously, like jackdaws, that even a twitch of the camera will make them fly off. The last tip that I'll give you is to just enjoy the process of watching these birds. I find it a real privilege to be able to sit and watch these birds in a semi-natural environment. Yes, clearly it's a little bit engineered because I've put out feed and perches, but you can still observe behaviours, and I find myself becoming mesmerised by just watching them coming in and feeding, and especially when you see a slightly more unusual species like I did with the sparrowhawk the other day. So what I'll do now is I'll leave you with some of my favourite photographs that I've taken over the last few days from here in the hide.
Fall for you again. We've been through it all. You're the one who understands.
If this video has inspired you to take photographs of birds, but you're concerned that you don't have the same space or facilities that I've got here, don't worry, there are lots of possibilities that you can use. I've taken photographs of birds from my kitchen window before. You can visit a local park. RSPB sites are free to go and look around, and they have lots of hides available, and if you really want to, you can pay to visit certain hides that have different displays, so you can see kingfishers or woodpeckers at different places throughout the country. Or alternatively, you can just watch more of my videos and see me taking photographs of birds. Now, if you have enjoyed that video, do let me know down below in the comments, and up over to my Instagram or Vero account. There you can see lots of my photographs, and you can also send me messages as well. Now, if you like what I do on the channel and want to help support me to make future content like this, then you can leave via the gift shop That's at Teespring. There I've got a range of merchandise on offer, so head off over there because a purchase really does help me out and it's very much appreciated. Don't forget my memberships for a small price. There's lots of perks available, so check out the link down below or click the join button to see a video that'll explain more of what's available. But you don't have to spend any money at all to support the channel. You can do that simply by clicking the like, subscribe and the bell notifications because it really does help me out and it makes sure that you don't miss out on any future content. Watch out for next week's video. That goes live on Sunday. In the meantime, you can go and check out this video just up here. But all that's left now is to say stay safe and I'll see you soon.